In today's world, it's extremely important that there is an ongoing dialogue between people of different faiths and different backgrounds, and between people of faith and between people of no faith. Because whether we have faith or not, we share common problems in this world. Environmental problems, problems of health, problems of poverty, problems of wealth creation, problems of illness, HIV. These are all problems that face anybody in the developing world and beyond the developing world, regardless of faith and belief. Now, people of faith, in my view, ought to be especially concerned about meeting some of these difficulties, because there is a clear command in Christianity, as there is a clear command in Islam, to actually take care of your neighbour, to look towards your neighbour, and to be concerned about the suffering and distress of your neighbour. So if anybody claims to profess a religious belief, that religious belief needs to be put forward in action. If we're going to put forward religious belief in action, it is sensible to do that cooperatively together. And there's been a good example of good cooperation between Christians and Muslims in Sri Lanka, where they face very difficult ethnic conflict, very difficult problems because of the tsunami. There have been very good examples of cooperation there. Uganda is definitely a country of faith. There are many good believing Christians here, there are many good believing Muslims here. And I have had a seminar to listen to the views about finding ways in the future of actually cooperating further on projects that will aid our own corporate development. And I have to say there's been a remarkably positive response. Negative response to cooperation between Christians and Muslims has actually come predominantly from the so-called developed world, from the United States actually, where fundamentalists have really had their say. And they just close their eyes to the fact that cooperation is possible and it's desirable. And if we believe in one God, I'm quite convinced that is what the one God wants.
But talking about religion playing an aspect in reconciliation, in the Ugandan situation it has been tried, where the religious leaders under a coalition came together, but they tried to talk to the rebels fighting the government for the last 20 years. But that seemed to have failed, and now we are back to military until forcing Kony to talk peace.
There have been difficulties in Uganda for many, many years. I mean, going back to when I used to live here, I used to live here 40 years ago. I lived here through the Amin coup. I was a great friend of Janani Lawum. Janani Lawum lost his life because he stood for truth and for justice and for that which is true. There will always be difficulties. And in some ways things go in a circular process, you know. You get rid of one difficulty and then you come round to another lot. The great thing is we must persevere with what is just, what is true, what is right, and what is fair for people, and not be put off by difficulties. One of the things that a good religion, if it's Christianity or if it's Islam, will teach you is to maintain hope, to really keep hope alive. And if we can do that, then we're 3/4 of the way home. So not to be discouraged, there will be discouragements. I've had discouragements in my own life. I was captured and spent 5 years in captivity, 4 years as a hostage, in solitary confinement, and 1 year with other people. And in those years I was captured by Islamic people. That doesn't mean to say that I have a grudge against Islam. Of course I don't. I understand why they behaved as they behaved, although I don't agree with the way they behaved. But I can understand that people who've suffered years of frustration find that they have to take dramatic action sometimes in order to draw attention to themselves. I don't agree with that. I think we should spend time talking together, working together, sharing together, and meeting common problems rather than fighting. Because fighting at the end of the day just brings distress and destruction.
In your opinion, if this innovation works, setting up the foundation, do you want it in northern Uganda, the most disturbed area?
Absolutely. If this foundation, if this cooperation works, it needs to be cooperation all across the country. In northern Uganda, north, and all over the country. It needs to be there. Because every part of the country has its own peculiar problems, its own difficulties. It has a wealth of talent, though, and no Ugandan should ever feel that there isn't here in this country the resources in people to actually deal with problems and deal with them constructively and in a good and positive way. They could do that. My view is that some of the Uganda may not be, the ordinary Ugandan in the village may not be a rich person in terms of money, but he's rich in terms of human relationships. He's rich in terms of really understanding what it is to live life. And he needs to be given an opportunity, and she needs to be given an opportunity to live life more fully. And if we can learn more effectively to cooperate together, then there's a better chance for the ordinary Ugandan to have a better standard of living, a better way of working, and a little bit more wealth creation.
Perhaps as a last, what is your message? You have been yourself like an abductee. There's thousands.
I would say this.
What's your message?
I learned this. Yeah, I learned this lesson in Uganda years ago because I suffered too as a result of the coup here, and I have seen many of my friends and many of my colleagues murdered. And then, when I was in captivity, I learned this in Beirut, when I was in captivity in Beirut, and I did all those years alone. I was angry, of course I was, just as some people in Uganda have been angry if they haven't been heard, or if they feel that their pride has been hurt, or if they feel that their tribal background has been ridden over and not understood. Of course people get hurt and get angry, because anger is a normal human emotion. But the great thing is, don't allow anger to turn to bitterness. Bitterness is like a cancer that enters the soul. It does more harm to those that hold it than against those whom it's held. So let your anger be turned constructively. If you're angry because you feel you've been slighted, turn that anger to constructive ways of use. Don't let it destroy you.
And to government, what is the message on reconciliation?
The message to government is listen to the people. Listen to the people. Realise that you can't, as a government, solve every problem. You can lay out a framework, but at the end of the day, unless you have people participation in government, nothing will happen.
You have any message for the rebels? For the rebels, do you have any message of reconciliation?
Reconciliation, definitely. It needs to be worked hard at. It needs to be innovative. We need to find new ways of working for reconciliation. And I personally, if I can play any part in that, will commit myself to doing what I can in a country where my son was born and where my son is proud to call himself a Ugandan.